welcome. I'm glad you came out here. I'm very excited to be here because in my life, I never imagined that I would ever go to Montana. And I always dreamed about Montana, I thought about it, and I imagined what it might be like to be there. And then I got to go last year, and that was pretty exciting. I went to Billings, pretty exciting place. I saw some really weird stuff. Really cool stuff. I went to some crazy bar and some old woman sang really ridiculous karaoke and saw a lot of interesting, it was really strange, but good strange, like not creepy strange. Here in Helena, yes, I'm learning.
Well done.
Yeah, Helena has been pretty exciting so far, but last year, I mean, Helena people have a big bar to reach, because last year, during the tournament, it was very exciting because someone had a baby. And so I'm wondering what you're going to do to top it this year. Because I live on excitement and adrenaline, which is why I am a university professor. I sit around with books and I give lectures on Friday night because adrenaline is what I live for. So, my name's Steve. I've been involved in debate since I was 15 years old. And one truth about debate that I've come across through all that time is that format is the most irrelevant thing to debate. Because formats will change. So the kind of debate I did, I started debate when I was 15, like I said, so I've only been debating about 4 or 5 years. It's a joke. No, I've been debating much longer than that. But formats have changed. So I did CX debating, policy debating, most of my life. And then in college I did NPDA debating. And I've taught LD and CX and everything, public forum, and I've taught teachers how to teach public forum when that came out. So I've had a lot of experience in formats, but one of the things that you can't do is be, I think, too committed to one particular format, or else you're going to have a life of disappointment. Every format will go away. History shows us. The kind of debating I did, a CX debate, would be unrecognizable to you if you just graduated high school and you were doing CX. What I was doing would look totally different than what pastors today. Like, we had no critiques. We had no intrinsicness, right? These kind of things. I won debates on justification and minor repair, of all things. Like, people don't run these arguments anymore. People laugh at people to even suggest it. PMNs. I'll give you $10 if you know what a PMN is. Ha-ha! Okay, well, anyway, weird debate history, or like need plan theory, right? Which is old stuff. I like debate history, so we can talk about all these old CX debate strategies that no longer obtain. But I guess where we should start is what you're familiar with in your debate language, because format is, I think, like a language, but actually it's a little bit more like a heavy accent. A very heavy accent. So it'd be like you being from Montana and running into someone who grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland, and trying to understand them if they were like unapologetic with the way they spoke. And that's the kind of difference we're dealing with. There's someone who's not a native speaker of English, and they're really trying very hard, and it's very difficult to do. So how many of you have debated before in your life? In high school, college? Oh, this is very good. What formats have you done? You can just call them out. I'll put them on the board.
LD. PF.
Policy.
Okay. Anything else? What else did I miss? That's pretty much it. Yeah.
BP.
BP, very good. Parley, right? So we should put them up here, yes? I assume when you say parley, you mean NPDA? Yes? Okay. Because we are in the snowy west, as Jack Kerouac would describe it. The snowy mountainous west. It's so exciting to be here. I can't get over like looking outside and seeing all the mountains. It's like a movie about a dream. I feel that far removed from it. I'm just like walking around like, whoa. It's definitely not what I'm used to seeing back home. All these formats, if you have experience on these formats, these translate very well into BP. And in fact, you have an advantage over people who've just done, I think, just straight BP. With some of these things, because you know a little bit more than they do. So we'll talk about the basic differences first of things that work pretty well in these formats that don't really work well in BP. This is good because we're all going to be sort of, unless you're debating, we're all going to be judging a BP round tonight. We're going to have a little demo debate. We'll do shortened speeches, like 5-minute speeches. We'll do a BP debate, and we'll all talk about it. So if you want to volunteer to be in the debate, that'd be cool. We'll do that after I'm done talking. But so the plan is just for me to kind of go over this stuff, then we'll have a debate, then we'll talk, then we'll give a critique of it. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to spend, it only takes about 30-45 minutes to learn this format. It's pretty straightforward. All of these forms of debate are different because they are constructed as zero-sum games. You guys take game theory? Yeah? You know what a zero-sum game is? What is it? One person wins and the other person loses. So you have, this is the only possible result. I like the special effects chalkboard. It's like Steven Seagal teaches, like explosions. Nice. We don't have this at my school. We have normal chalkboards that don't have sound effects. Like Theremin, like Moog designed this chalkboard or something. Theremin chalkboard. That was kind of. So, and then these kind of debates, there's a winner and a loser. Yes? So the winner of the semifinal debate on a 2-1 decision is the affirmative. Or, yeah. Or I can't believe we won that. Let's look like we deserve it. Yeah? In BP you don't have this because you have 4 teams involved in the debate. So it's quite a bit different. So this is how we represent a BP debate, is with this little schematic here. And there are 4 teams, they all have different names. I'll abbreviate them here and I'll talk about them in just a second as far as what these mean for the debate. Right, okay, so instead of a side victory, which is what this is, or a, first victim of the night, or an adversarial format, where one side wins and one side loses, you have a format where the winners, or the people who do well, can be from different sides. Because you're looking at each team and how they do, and the judges rank them 1 to 4. 4 would be considered a loss, 1 would be considered a win, but 2 and 3 are like degrees of winning and losing. Like degrees of that. Yeah, it's a little strange. It's a lot more like, have you ever seen the Westminster Dog Show on TV? On cable? Like if you're bored or, you know, and they like run around the ring and the judge is like 1, 2, 3, 4 and everyone's like, this is what it's like. So 1 to 4 is the ranking, and each ranking gives you points in the tournament. So if you get a 1, you get 3 points. If you get a 2, you get 2 points. If you get a 3, you get 1 point. If you get 4, you get no points. And those points add up to some kind of total that will be determined in the tournament whether or not you break. So people will go around at a BP tournament saying, what are you on? What are you on? You're like, we're on 8, we're on 9, we're on 10. Oh, doing quite well, right? So how many points have you collected? Because it's not necessarily based on win-loss, it's about how many points have you been assigned by the judges, yes? So at any given tournament, the assumption would be that if you took a 2 in every debate, you would break. So usually looking at somewhere around, 5 prelims, maybe 10, 6 prelims, 12 points. You're probably going to clear to the semifinals or quarters or whatever it is at the tournament. So that's a big difference. This is the first major difference. So this informs the strategy of how you speak, since the goal is to get yourself points in the mind of the judge, not to demolish the other side's case. That is a huge difference from formats, from all of these formats, where your goal is to undermine the case of the other side. Or sometimes, in some formats, like in policy, right? In NPDA, policy's second cousin, I guess now? I don't know what the relationship is. Or maybe policy is the crazy uncle. It's like, I'm never going to be like that guy. It's like, you're making life decisions where you're pretty much turning into that guy. It's like, yeah, but he's my worthless uncle. He never amounted to anything. You're kind of doing the same thing, dude. I hate to tell you. But in NPDA, same thing. It's like, you actually don't have any obligation to provide, if you're opposition, any kind of positive, any kind of case. Now in LD, this is where LD is much more similar to BP. Because you are expected to provide a case. Yes? If you're negative. That's a big similarity, and that helps quite a bit. But those of you who haven't done LD, that's a big difference. Like if you're opposition, you're expected to provide a case, and not only are you expected to provide a case, if you're every one of these teams is expected to provide a perspective on the motion, on what they stand for, their thesis, their idea, what it is they're offering to the debate. You can't just win by tearing apart the other side, because it's not a zero-sum game. So the metaphor that I always use about this kind of debate compared to other kinds of debate is this is kind of like a potluck dinner, where you want to be the person. Maybe it's like a potluck dinner in an organization that's very kind of like weird politics, like kind of the civil sneer kind of politics, where it's like everyone pretends to be friends, but they kind of like talk about each other behind their back. So it's like you have the potluck dinner, and somebody brings these really nice beans. Who brought those beans? They're delicious. I don't know. Who was it? So whoever brought the beans is like awesome. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody thinks the beans are amazing. Whatever they contributed is getting them a lot of conversation. A lot of words are being produced about the beans. Yeah? That is how you win in BP. So it's like if you generate something that gets everyone else talking, you're going to get a lot of credit for that. So that's a big difference too. Unlike other formats, which are kind of like a dysfunctional family reunion, where if no one talks to you, you win. If no one can say anything about your claims, about your life, like, ooh, got out of there. So the idea of the dysfunctional family reunion is to make yourself as small as possible. Parametrics, yes? Make yourself as small as possible and move through the field. Oh my gosh, there's Aunt Cindy, we're going this way. This kind of thing. And you try to avoid conversation. And that way you win. You're like, yes, they had what's a beautiful thing when you're planning with your partner? A beautiful thing in American formats is when you can say, oh, we've got them. This is an awesome strategy because, and you can say it with me, they'll have nothing to say. In BP, we call this losing the debate. In American debate formats, most of the time we call it parametrics, yes, which is I'm going to take the smallest sliver of the motion I can and run that as my case, and I'm going to win. Now, in LD or PF, it doesn't really work this way, but in policy and LD, and in policy and other form, and in PDA, it works like this, right? The less links, the better. If I can avoid linking to anything, that's cool, because then I don't have to have the impact debate. I always outweigh them if they're just spinning status quo. Yeah. But in this format, it doesn't really work that way. The philosophy is that you need to bring something compelling, persuasive, and something that is at the center of what the reasonable average person, I'll put this over here because this is really important. What the reasonable average person would think is persuasive. If you offer that, you're in a very good position of winning the debate. So if you take a motion, any motion you can think of that would be controversial, you debate, if you can provide a very good thesis, and my partner and I, we stand against this motion because of the idea of blah, 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 and how we support that. And blah, blah, blah is incredibly important, da, 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 da. And you just offer reasons for that. You need to say, now we're going to engage what the other side has brought to us, what the other side has told us. We're going to show how that's faulty or how our perspective is superior to that. So you're really offering a lot of your own material and not offering a lot of rebuttal. You do need to engage the other side's arguments. But if you just do that, you're going to lose. And if you engage them on smaller sorts of issues and not the big philosophical or big picture arguments, you're probably going to lose. So if your big argument against their education plan, if they get up and they say, on some motion about education, they say, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the most important thing for a country to do is invest in the future. We stand on principle that investment in future generations is what countries should do, and that's why we support the motion that this House should, provide, let's say, a free university education. Something like that. So our plan is very simple. We just believe the government should pick up the tab for qualified people, whatever education they want to do, and here are the reasons we think this is good for society. Da, 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 da. If your response to this is, well, that's going to be incredibly expensive, you're probably not going to win. If you just say, it's going to be very expensive, and we can't do it because it'll trade off with other funding, and that'll be bad. But if you argue that in terms of principle, if you say that financial conservatism or something is the thing that we need to put first, then you're in a position of winning. But you can't just argue it on mechanics. And in a lot of other formats, you can argue mechanics and win. Does that make sense to everyone? You can sort of say, so a lot of people in the United States will say, well, the education debate is a debate about funding. It's a debate about money. That money doesn't exist. That money will have to come from other programs, which will hurt those other programs. That's an argument you can make, but it's not an argument that will win you a debate in BP. That argument, coupled with an argument about why in principle, and this is a very important word, why in principle your position is better, then you're in a much better position to win. So the way to imagine this kind of debate, I've already given you one weird metaphorical situation involving beans and dysfunctional families. I'll give you one that's a little bit more reasonable. You want to speak as if you were a political theorist, speaking to other political theorists about ideas, about what governments should do. So many years ago, there were these very popular bracelets. You guys remember this? WWJD, yes? Right, so I have changed this. I haven't marketed it yet, so you could probably steal it. Instead of saying this in debate, you say, what would good governments do? And this is sort of the question that you have for generating arguments on any motion, no matter what position that you are, if you're opposition or government. What would the best governments in the world do? So this kind of takes us a little segue into what research looks like in this format. If the big question for planning your argumentation, or for like the rhetorical candidate of invention, as we call it in classical rhetoric tradition, how do I come up with what to say? The research is, you need to know something about how every government in the world handles those big philosophical issues. How do they handle their economy? How do they handle their education system? How do they handle their energy policy? That's a good one for us right now, when if you're watching the news and watching what our Congress is doing with that. We have never had an energy policy. It's a very strange thing. Such a big country, such a powerful country, very strange, I think. But it doesn't ever seem to be something that doesn't seem important in principle to this government. But other governments in the world have one. The education policy of this country versus other countries is very different. So you want to look at who are the governments who are doing it good, who are doing it well, and then you also want to look at who are those governments, countries that are not doing it so well, and maybe the ones that are like probably intentionally doing it poorly. And these all become your examples for why particular principles win on a motion, and why other principles might lose on a particular motion. So you want to marshal those forces. So this research is very general research. I say it's sort of like if you're a professional not a professional, college athlete. Let's use something a little bit more close to home. A college athlete. If you're a college athlete, you probably need to spend some time in the gym. No? Yeah. Maybe if you're on your backgammon team, I guess you don't need to go to the gym. You probably need to spend a little time in the gym every day. 30, 45 minutes, something like that. So I always use the analogy, say, in college basketball, they don't just show up to the game after laying around all week. And then on the weekend, the game comes, they're like, sweet, let's go play. And a lot of debaters do this, which is very strange, I think. You need to spend about 30, 45 minutes a day refreshing, getting your mind wrapped around what's going on in the world, what other countries are doing, and the philosophy behind their moves. And that's the only really kind of research that you need to do. Now, if you've done LD, you'll have a big leg up on this principle thing. Because what does a principle sound like, LDers? A value. Yeah, very good. LD fans out there, I knew you guys were still around. So it sounds a lot like a value, and it functions that way. But it's not as cookie cutter as a value. It can be, the cool thing about BP is it can be whatever you want it to be. You're not sort of tied into the cookie cutter sort of approach like, my value is democracy. My criterion is a social contract. A social contract is defined by who's he, what's it? Here's the following. No. Where it's like, my value is democracy. My criterion is the veil of ignorance. John Rawls, nobody put it. This kind of cookie cutter thing. You get tired. And sometimes it doesn't work. Like if you have a principle of justice and you have some weird criterion for somebody who's not, doesn't really jive with what we mean by justice, right? Like if you go and look up Aristotle's vision of justice, it's very different than the more modern philosopher's idea of justice. You can do what you want, you can say what you want, but it helps you if you do have command of some of these theories behind you. It's not going to help you win a debate if you're just like, we believe in the social contract. And you need to explain it, because there are no cards, no evidence, nothing like that. And so that's pretty good. PF has some evidence, but it's light, so that's kind of a similarity there too. It's more about what you're able to say and what you're able to argue versus what you're able to cut. So no cards, no evidence, nothing like this. Just what you have in your head and what your partner has in their head. Some of you are like, oh dear. But you can fix that. You can go around, read around, see what other countries do. Like, it would be nice to know. And here's a trick for doing that kind of research. Figure out which countries have incredibly strict policies on immigration. Who can come in? Those are the countries that probably have a lot of demand of people wanting to come there. If they have a very, sort of restrictive, they don't want, they're like very restrictive about who can come in. They probably have some good stuff going on. A nice social welfare system, a nice education system, nice opportunities. And then you look at the countries that are like, maybe have a restrictive leaving policy. And those are the countries that probably aren't doing it so well. And those become really good examples that you can use in the debate. So it'd be good to start working on this list immediately. Like, what are those countries, and trying to match them up with particular principles that you might want to argue in the debate. So instead of just focusing on pure effects, this is going to cause this, which is going to lead to this, which is going to lead to nuclear war, and we're all going to die except Turn, Ashtar. Ashtar will come and save us all. In the event of a nuclear war, he's the commander of the 57th Galactic Fleet. He's in orbit. You guys know the Ashtar Tournament? Okay, that's a classic. It came back a couple of years ago. It's sort of like, I don't know who the P. Diddy is of debate, who's remixing all these old arguments from years ago, but it's kind of nice. But this doesn't happen. There's not a lot of debate about cause and effect. There's a little bit of impact debate, but not much. Mostly it's about, the impact debate happens on the level of principle. It sort of sounds like this. If we were to do the motion, or if we were to go against the motion, we would go in violation of this principle that has served us so well. And if we go in violation of this principle, it's going to lead to these kind of decisions being made. It's like a Kantian imperative sort of argument, if you catch my drift, yeah? So it's like, if we were to decide against this principle, or this way of thought, it would lead to these other poor ways of thinking. You can make that kind of a simple argument to think about how impact. Now, people do say, well, this might cause a war, this might cause conflict, but those arguments are sort of diminished in the light of the level of the principle debate, which is, what do we stand for and why? And why, in principle, we'd be against that idea. And that kind of thing really carries a lot of weight in BP. So that's the biggest difference, I think, for debating in this format. The research burden is different, and the way the arguments are constructed is quite a bit different than any American format. The judging is different, too. In any debate, you'll have, hopefully, 3 judges. That'll be your panel. Every debate has 3. And one of these judges is called the chair, and the other 2 are called the wing judges. The chair judge is the person who sort of runs the debate, and they do all that formal stuff, like I call the House to order, I'd like to recognize the first speaker to speak about this motion, da-da-da-da. You give your arguments to all 3 judges. At the end of the debate, they kick you out of the room, and then the 3 judges will discuss the debate. And they all must come to an agreement on the rankings together. Now that's very different than these other formats where you might have a panel of judges, but they're actually forbidden by the rules to talk about the decision with each other until the ballots are done, yes? This is the opposite of that. And it's called consensus judging. So there's no strategy of seeing your panel and being like, well, that guy's an idiot. Those other 2 kind of get it. I'm going for those 2 with my whack argument. So if you know you have 2 judges who really like the feminism critique, and one who hates it, be like, this is going to be a very painful round for you, sir, but I'm going for these 2. Observation 1, it's right? I actually had 2 of my students do that. I was like, they got up there like, I'm sorry, this is going to be a very bad round for you because we're going for these 2. Observation 1, that was pretty funny, I thought. That's a strategy that shows us the philosophy behind these games. If we think of these debates as games, shows us the philosophy behind those and what they're meant to be, which are games that sort of train people for particular types of argumentation in the world they may encounter. For example, arguments in academia or arguments in the legal system, legal profession, where it is possible where you can get a panel that's independently deciding and you're just going for a majority, that kind of thing. Or if you're defending a dissertation, you get the votes, you're in, yeah? Consensus judging is part of the model of BP, which is this idea that it should be accessible, oh, that's a good noise, it should be accessible to the reasonable average person. So the consensus judging, you want to think about it as like the talk of people after the debate, perhaps, like the consensus conversation of the people who heard it, and them all talking, well, what did you think? What did you think? Which is the way people, general people, talk about political debate. Right? They all meet at work, and they're like, well, what did you think about that argument? Did you find it persuasive? No, I didn't. I found this more persuasive. So I gave it to this guy, I gave it to that guy. And through conversation, they sort of figure out who had the best stuff. Because it is quite possible that one judge would miss something, yeah? We've all been there. You're like, but that second turn, yeah, you didn't say anything about that, and they dropped it. And the judge will be like, oh, I didn't get that. And you're like, oh, I won. But it's not really like about this, and this is more like a general, there's no line by line. There's like a general sense. Most judges don't flow line by line in BP. They take notes about what you're saying and important arguments, and they take a lot of notes, and they're quite good at it. But they're looking for what is going to sway that reasonable person. That's what they're really looking for. And it's a strange thing to think about. So they'll all talk, and they'll say, well, we either came to consensus, and we think the first should go to this team, the second should go to this team, the third should go to this team, the fourth should go to this team. And they explain their reasoning. Usually the chair does all this. The wings might talk to you privately, but the wings don't really address you formally in the debate. They might talk, you can talk to them in the hallway or something after the decision is given, something like that. But this system is designed to sort of do more, I guess, more of a imaginary public access for the debate. Something like that. Think of it like that. So that's quite a bit different than American formats, I think. So, how does the debate work? You get the motion, and you have 15 minutes to prepare your arguments for the motion. The motion changes every debate. So you'll get a mix of different kinds of things. Politics, economics, social issues, cultural issues, all kinds of different things. That should be balanced in a good tournament. You won't get the same kind of stuff. But sometimes you get pop culture motions. Sometimes you get a sports motion. I don't know anything about sports. So I'm always like a great judge for that. I'm like all these names and positions. I don't even know what sport we're talking about. I'm just like, what is happening? Like, and everyone will be like, yeah, and so, you know, we all know what happened with GK Swifty McGee last season. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, here. Yes, we all remember that incident. You know, because as a dude, there's a big cultural pressure that you should be interested in sports, and I find them torturous to watch or even think about. It's my own personal Guantanamo Bay. It's just awful. I'm like, bring up, please, oh, you a waterboarding guy? Come over here and get me away from this football game. All right. So, that might be a little extreme. No, it really is pretty bad, the more I think about it. So, there will be a sports motion from time to time. The thing to know is that you can't use the internet or your phone, text your smart buddy, call your mom. Mom, do you know who GK Swifty McGee is? No, can't do that. Nothing like this. So it's just you and your partners, what you have in your head. Now, some teams will produce some general research briefs that they carry on with them about what's going on in the world, important conflict areas, important issues. I always recommend you carry an almanac with you, or as you might. You probably don't know what an almanac is, maybe you do. But an almanac is the analog version of the internet. In an almanac, one can look up, it's just like Google, but instead of typing in, where is the most populous city in Africa, you just look at the index, the Africa part, and you just look at population, listed by population, and there it is. On this stuff called paper, which is the analog version of a monitor. So I can speak your language, I'm hip. I'm with kids today. So I recommend spending the $8 on an almanac and carrying it with you to every tournament, because you never know when you'll get a motion, as we did many years ago when I was first starting, where the almanac saved the teams who brought it, and the ones who didn't have an almanac were in trouble, and the motion was this house would return the Golan Heights. Oh dear. No internet, no smart friend. Now, how many of you would be all right talking about that motion? You still look smart people. All right, good guys. That's what I thought. You guys look like smart people. You do. You really do. I'm not just saying that because I'm here with actual Montanans, which is really kind of freakily cool. Montana people. This is awesome. Some of you might not be from Montana. That's cool. I still think of you as Montanans. And I mean, it's a good thing. I'm like, wow. Like this morning, I'm like walking around. I'm like, those are Montana people. They live here. This is really cool. It's It's really exciting. I like it. So, 15 minutes, debate goes. At the end of the debate, they kick you out of the room, they discuss the decision, and then they tell you how it went. And that's pretty much it. Everyone has a speech. We should talk about that because each person's speech. Now, there aren't very many hard rules. And in fact, BP, I like to think of as an theoretical format. So most of these formats have a theory in them. Some of them more explicitly than others, right? This one. A little bit, maybe here, maybe people, you recent LDers, maybe people are critiquing the resolution. Are they? Yeah, they're just like, okay. So that's cool. That's a bit of a meta conversation. When I say a theoretical, in debate, a theoretical argument, theoretical conversation, I'm talking about the meta, the debate about debate and what debate should be. This does not occur in BP. Period. Full stop. Like if you got up and you were like, they are not debating the motion, they are not topical, the judges would be like, but you can still argue against them because there's no like research burden. You know? It's not like they went and cut something really weird and they're arguing and you're like, but this is really stupid, da-da-da. The judge is like, oh, but you don't have any cards. Nah, nah, nah. It doesn't happen like this, right? So the way you can deal with this is sort of directly in the course of the argument. If you feel like they've gotten the motion wrong or they've parametricized to avoid a certain argument, you can stand up as in opposition and say, we feel like they kind of missed the debate here. We feel like the debate is centered around this issue, this really more controversial centerpiece of the debate. But we'll still argue, we'll still show you why their points are wrong, but we're going to argue our case as if this were the center of the debate. You'll be rewarded for that. So if the center of the debate is a question of like, what should we do? What would be the best way to educate one's citizens? And they decide to just talk only about, limit the debate only to kindergarten or something like that. And they're like, they feel like they don't have to answer any of these higher education arguments. Well, they're wrong. Because in principle, they do. And you could tease that out and say, so in principle, they would support this. And we're going to tell you why that's wrong. So you really sort of give if you parametricize, you really give the opposition a big upper hand in the debate. You probably lose based on that alone. Plus the judges won't like it. So there's really no meta debate. There's no topicality. There's nothing that you would see in a high-tech or like counterplan theory. There's nothing like that. I know some of you are like weeping, starting to weep. You're like, oh, my dispositionality bad blocks. What will I do? Oh. Well, you can frame them, hang them in your bedroom. Your roommate will think you're weird, but that's really beyond the scope of this workshop. Roommate relations, that's the workshop, I think, in the other building, going on simultaneously. But there's room for theory discussion, but it's about sort of ideas. So you're welcome to bring your weird critical theorists from France into the debate and talk about it. But you need to do it in a way that's accessible to the reasonable person. This is much more, if there is a difference between rhetoric and philosophy, and that difference is old, you might have even studied it, the sophists and the Socratics, who accesses truth and who accesses semblance. For most professional rhetoricians, like myself, and most philosophers, that debate is over, and we're sort of like, well, actually, both sort of access a semblance in a way. But what rhetoricians are more concerned with is audience. Philosophers are not so concerned with audience. They're like, well, it's true, regardless of who you're speaking to. Yes? This is like an a priori claim or something like that. I'm talking broad brush here. But it helps us understand how BP differs from this. Because in CETA or in PDA, you might be able to access some argument that regardless of how, people be like, look, I feel for you. You have some good arguments, but their warrants are better. Or, they're just like, they had better stuff, so you lose. But I'm actually more persuaded by you. Like, that happens all the time in these other formats, yeah. That is, in BP, that should not happen, right? It should be, I was more persuaded by you, so you won. Regardless of how, teched out the other side is. Does that make sense? Making sense to you? It's a little weird to think about. But judges are actually sort of like, I believe this moved the debate more to your side. I thought that was persuasive. I'm giving it to you. So it's based on this idea of just moving the ball around rather than actually scoring. If you want to think of it that way. Who's getting the most yardage, I guess? If you want to, now I'm making sports analogies. Dangerous. Dangerous. We're going to move away from that. So the audience is most important. Would a reasonable person interested in making a good decision understand your argument? Would they find it persuasive? That's the checklist, right? You can be right, but things like being right, and you'll hear more about this tomorrow when I sort of go against everything I'm saying here tonight, when we do the advanced stuff tomorrow. This is like the basic intro. I'm just sort of giving you the basic rules. Then I'm going to critique myself tomorrow. So future me will have a lot to say about what I'm saying tonight, but that's the future. I don't really know what he's going to say. But for now, the idea is that this reasonable person is who we're appealing to. And that would be a common person off the street, regular, maybe not like anyone off the street, but somebody who pays attention to politics, somebody who's interested in the world, somebody who believes strongly that there's certain things that we should be doing and should not be doing. Somebody who reads a newspaper, digital or analog. Somebody who knows what an almanac is. No, that's not really all that important. And to a philosopher, in some of these other formats, we wouldn't really care about the audience. We would care about that person's like, okay, this argument was solid based on what I know about Derrida or Foucault or whatever. Right? Foucauldian critique is solid, that kind of thing. And a reasonable person might not necessarily understand what a Foucauldian critique is or what biopower is, but you could make a reasonable average person understand what that is. The only question is how much time you want to spend doing it. And you only have 7 minutes, right? Whoa, look at this. This is for heavy duty racing. They don't joke, they do not mess around in this classroom. Look at this. Watch this.
Board behind you.
That's like some Harry Potter stuff. There's probably another chalkboard in here.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
Another color.
I haven't, I can use this too, yeah.
We've got markers for underneath.
This is way too high tech for me. This is great. This is a serious classroom. I should have planned better. Well, 7 minutes. Everybody gets one 7-minute speech and that's it. So you better make it count. No rebuttal. Nothing like that. No Prime Minister speaks twice, nothing like that. You speak once and you're done. And there's no flipping of the speech order. So you speak in order. Opening government, just like tennis, right? Just like this, straight down the bench. So opposition ends the debate. That's kind of weird to a lot of you guys who are used to the affirmative beginning and ending the debate, because something in argumentation theory says that they should. This debate is not based on those kind of, is not based on argumentation theory generated by Americans. And so that burden is gone. For better or for worse, it's just not there. So, everybody has a job to do. And these are sort of the basics of debating. Everyone has a job to do. This is like the first rule of debating. It's what we call role fulfillment. What your role is in the debate. Every speaker has a role that they need to achieve. It's very simple. It's not a very complicated rule at all. So, I'll go through this and put the abbreviations up here, and maybe you can write down, but you'll learn the speaker names as you go, but everyone has a formal name in the course of the debate. First speaker for opening government is the Prime Minister. First speaker for opening opposition is the Leader of the Opposition. Second speaker, Deputy Prime Minister. I bet you can't guess. Second speaker for opening opposition. Deputy Opposition Leader. Yeah? It's very difficult. Moving down the bench, member of the government. Who do you think this is? Very good. So you guys catch on quick. It's even beyond catching on quick. You guys are predicting what I'm going to say, which is some psychic stuff. That's heavy. That's not learning. That is something else. That's a little bit bigger than all of us. Just put that out. Government whip. What do you think the next person is called? Very good. Opposition whip. Okay, so here's the role, and it's something that just kind of makes sense in debate. Prime Minister's job is to open up the debate, tell us what the debate's going to be about, what they stand for, why the proposition's a good idea. Leader of opposition is supposed to come up and say why the motion is a bad idea, what they stand for, why what the government said is bad. Member is supposed to refute that person, but then also bring up a new argument. Everyone is responsible for contributing something new, not just rebuttal. There's no one in the debate who just does rebuttal, except for these two speakers at the bottom. It's even questionable whether they do rebuttal. They do what's called a summary speech. They summarize the entire debate and explain why their side has won, even though the judges are not deciding this debate based on side. It was complicated, but you'll catch on. It's like part of their job is to pretend as if they're like arguing for their whole side, winning the debate. But if they do that really well, that means their team will get a 1. Yes? Does it make sense? Kind of weird. All right, so deputy leader of the opposition, same thing. Rebuild the case and refute what they said over there. Then we move to the second half of the debate. Now, like I said, there's only a couple of simple rules. This is rule number 2. These people are on the same side. Have you noticed that? They're both affirmative. So you have 2 affirmative teams. Now, this is where things get kind of tricky. What can this team say in the debate in favor of the motion? Should they say what the other team said? Why not?
They have to be original.
What?
They have to be original and bring something new to the debate.
Yeah, they should bring something new to the debate. They should bring something, well, maybe not even necessarily new, but something that is their own. They have ownership of something. Why? Well, they're trying to beat this other team. So these 2 teams do not work together in prep time. You would never work. Why would you work with somebody who you want to beat? Right? Why would you be like, here's an awesome argument we can say? Well, guess what? They get credit for it. You don't. Especially if they speak first, right? So you only work with your partner. So when you're closing government or closing opposition, you have to really think carefully about what that opening team will probably say. They'll grab onto the most obvious and best arguments. And then you have to think about what are some arguments left for us that would also be good and interesting and carry the day. All right? So, and then the other rule is, what if they really blow it? Can you be like, well, sorry folks, the opening government really screwed up, but we're here to save it. Let's just hit reset on this whole debate. Start over. It'd be nice if you could do that, but you cannot do that. You have to maintain, and this is rule number 2, you have to maintain loyalty to your side. Loyalty to your side. What does that mean? You cannot overtly and directly contradict anything your opening says. Can't do it. You got to stay with them. This is a game developed for sort of, instead of a legal system or academic system of argumentation, it's like a parliamentary system. Where in a parliamentary system you often have coalition governments. Something that we don't have in the United States. Coalition governments. What's a coalition government? Well, it's when one party doesn't have a majority enough of seats in the parliament to form a government. So they ally themselves with another party, and then they make an agreement about who should have what seats, who should have what minister positions, who should have what leadership positions, and what are the policies that they're going to prioritize and stuff. And if they make an agreement, they form a coalition, they become the government. So in that situation, you don't really want to give a lot of credit to the successes of things to that other party, because you want to be the dominant party, and you don't want to be in their party or you join it. You're just with them as political expediency to get things done. And one of the ways you can do that is to take credit for things that you guys have done while you're done. So the idea is that you can say, oh, our opening table did an excellent job with their arguments, and we really think that they're winning the debate against the opening opposition. We feel like this is very, very clear, but we'd like to move the debate in a different direction and look at something that has not been examined yet in this debate. And that is the role of blah, 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 or the principle of blah, 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 whatever. Does it make sense to everyone? So it's sort of like, it's not necessarily, I mean, this gentleman's right to say it has to be something new, but not necessarily new. If they brush or breathe on a point that you think is interesting and undeveloped, if they leave it underdeveloped, you can certainly seize on that and run with it. You think of it as a fumble or something. Okay, you can do that. But a lot of judges will say you have to have something new. I don't agree. It just has to be different, or more importantly, it has to be yours. Like, at the end of the debate, the judge should be able to say what each team stands for. What's their thesis? What do they stand for? What are they standing on? And it can't be, they're standing on the fact that they punched a bunch of holes in the other team's argument. No, no, no. That's like standing on a hole. You can't do that. You'll fall through it and disappear from the debate. Right? Down you go. Bye-bye, Alice. Okay? So, cannot do that. You have to stand on something. So at the end of the day, the judges are going to be saying, what did this team bring to the debate? What did they offer? Baked beans, ziti, whatever it is. Or were they that guy who just brought the napkins and the plates and then ate everybody's food? It's like, let's do a potluck again sometime. This is awesome. I'll bring the soda. It's like 2 Coke Zeros and a caffeine-free Sprite. Oh, I'll take that pie home with me. That was awesome. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy either, right? So what this speaker does, the member speaker, they're responsible for providing something that in the parlance of BP is called an extension, which is basically just that idea of what do we stand for. That's part of their role. And it can't contradict them, right? So if they stand for the most important thing in society is investing in the young people, they can't come up and say the most important thing in society is investing in the elderly. No, right? They can certainly say, what we'd like to do in this debate is look at, from the point of view of a stable society, how this helps the family. And that's what our analysis is going to be about. And they can run with that. Whatever. You have a lot of latitude. You just don't want to do anything that looks like you're contradicting them, which in the slang of BP is called a knife. So you'll hear people at a tournament talk about this, like, how'd you do? It's like, well, we got knifed, so we won, right? This is going to happen, right? If your bottom team contradicts you, then it can help you out quite a bit. Or we got knifed, but the judge didn't notice it, so we lost. Or they knifed us, or we knifed somebody, we didn't realize it. So you hear people say this all the time. But it's nothing to be concerned about. You really want to be concerned about not breaking the rules, but this is a cool format because it's not about violating rules, breaking rules. It's about what you can contribute, what you can add, what you can say. Final two speeches, whip speeches. These are summary speeches, so they're the only two speeches that aren't required to bring something new into the debate, except they're summary. But they usually step back and they say, let's look at this debate from three positions, or three main points, or three perspectives. Why did government side win this debate? 3 reasons. And then they articulate those reasons. They can be other arguments in the debate. Their material for their speech comes from the things that other people have said in the debate. It's sort of doing a comparative analysis. So you're sort of like judging the debate for the judges. That's what that speech is. You know, it's not too technical. You want to kind of, this is like the 30,000 foot view. But you can it's kind of like you're in a military jet, so you can zoom in and get a close look at something and then pull back out. You're like, okay, now let's go over here. So military jet's cool, right? They can go really fast. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. There's not, the third rule, if there is one, is mysterious aspect of quality. Quality arguments. Quality arguments. What's a high quality argument? Something that appeals to the reasonable person. Something that has a lot of good examples. Something that is in the context of what other people are saying. You can't just go out and just you can't, for better or for worse, you can't just be like, language critique, here we go. Can't do that, even though you might want to. It has to be, you could if you're creative. That's the thing, it's like creative, imaginative debate. Maybe that betrays that they're not really upholding their principle or something like that. I don't know. The thing is, I don't want to say that there are things that are against the rules. There really aren't very many things against the rules, except just calling your top half worthless and resetting the debate, or speaking for 20 minutes. That's about it, though. Everything else is fair game. One last thing about the debate is POIs. Now, POIs work. In some formats, you're familiar with POIs. PDA has them. POIs are points of information. So, after the first minute of your speech, and before the last minute of your speech, the 5 minutes in the middle, the other side can stand up like this or like this, however they want to do it, and try to take the floor from you. But you're in control of the floor. Right? So Brent over here wanted to interrupt me. He can stand up like this, and I don't have to take him. I can do this. That's all I have to do. Now, if I wanted to, I could be more polite. I could say, no, thank you. I could say, I'll get to you after this point. He has to sit down. But then if I do take him, he's got about 15 to 20 seconds to either ask a question or make an argument. Or, my favorite way to think about POIs is Insta Rebuttal. So you don't get a rebuttal speech, yeah? So sometimes if you're a new BP, you're sitting there like, man, they're really making a mockery of our case. They're not really talking. I wish I could say something against them. Oh, but I can't. Right? And if they take, you can be like, they're ignoring everything we told you. They're like misconstruing our arguments. Here's what we said. Here's how I proved it. They didn't say anything about that. And you just sit down. It's cool. You don't really have to ask them a question. You can make an argument. Right? Or you can talk about or you can try to throw them off. You can be like, an interesting example, but how did that work out in Costa Rica? And then sit down and they're like, oh my God, I don't know anything about Costa Rica except the coffee's really good. What am I going to say? So you can try those kind of games, throwing them off and stuff, but you don't really want to waste a POI and just throwing people off. You want it to really count for something, so Insta Rebuttal. That's what I like to think of them as. But you can ask, if you're really genuinely lost, you can be like, dude, I'm lost. What are you talking about? And sit down. You can do anything you want. But if the speaker takes a POI, so you're not really allowed to say anything clever or cute when you stand up for a POI. You're supposed to just say, madam, sir, or information, or on that point, very popular one, on that. Or if you're really emphatic, on that very point. And they'll be like, no. Sometimes in a heated debate, people are like, no. And then they keep talking. It's fine. It's fine. So, POIs. Your own side can't ask you POIs. That'd be a little ridiculous. It's like, what about my brilliant point in my speech? You're like, good, yes, partner. I do think that was a brilliant point. Maybe you're forgotten. Maybe, POI. Maybe you're forgetting what we discussed in prep time. So, wouldn't that be nice? But no, you're not allowed to do that. Boy, that'd be a lifesaver, wouldn't it? Are you going to ignore what we talked about in prep time every debate, or just until we get to the finals? It's not going to happen, sorry. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Until we get to the more advanced stuff tomorrow. But that's the basics for understanding it. Persuasive, quality arguments to a reasonable audience. No meta, no topicality, anything like that. Sorry, topicality fans.
I've got 4 teeth ready when you're ready.
All right, good.
I can get the slides ready if you get a topic ready.
Okay, I have a topic.
All right, but Rocky, what do you want? Like, since you traveled so long and far from Billings.
While we're setting this up, does anybody have any questions about the basics
Rocky,
of the
what do you
format?
want? I'm actually going to let you pick.
Rules. Yes, sir.
What would be the advantage of taking a point of interest if you don't have to take one?
Well, that's a good controversial question. There's a lot of stuff going on with it. Generally, you're supposed to take 2. That would be like being a good debater, because it sort of tests your ability to make your arguments.
First got it from me, Mark.
So like, it looks bad as a debater if you don't take one.
Yeah, you're supposed to take 2. Hang on a sec. We'll do. Let's do this.
Doesn't matter.
Very good. All right. So the question was, why would you ever take a POI if you're kind of scared? Like, I mean, people will do this all the time. They'll be like, that debater's really good. I'm not taking any of their POIs, but that person looks kind of weak. So it like encourages you to act like you're the weak, dumbass or whatever, and then you can just rip them apart with your POI. But so the general claim internationally is take 2, but there's no rule enforcing this. So a lot of people have just been taking 1. I like the idea of taking 2 because it usually is to your advantage. Most of the time, it will spark you into talking about something that you might have forgotten to talk about because you get kind of caught up in your own words and you like the sound of your own voice. I mean, we're all debaters here. Let's not lie. We're in this because of several reasons. They might not be the most socially adept reasons, but we like the sound of our own voice. That's probably one thing that we all share. So with that in mind, you might be like, this is awesome, this example. And then you take a POI and they're like, they might give away something. They'll be like, yes, but our second reason, addresses all that. You'll be like, I was just about to get to that. It really helps you out quite a bit. But sometimes a POI can throw you off, but as comfort, no one's won or lost a debate based on a POI. And they shouldn't. Like, no judge should be like, well, that POI really burned him, and he was up there like, for about 15 seconds, so 4. No, it's a holistic evaluation. And POIs help with that. They don't help that much, though. So, I mean, it's a live question. So at the European Championships, they had some rule where if you don't take 2, then it should affect the judging in some way. This was very controversial. You can go read about it on the internet. People were posting all kinds of angry things. Because it's never been codified in the rules how many POIs you should take. So it goes 2 ways. One of them is like, it's a sign of quality argumentation. You're able to take them. Another one is like, if it's about quality argumentation, why not give an uninterrupted speech for 7 minutes? So I don't know. It's something that needs to be worked out. Am I saying it needs to be codified? No. But I like the idea of taking 2. Because I think it just shows that you can handle it. It's quite nice. And it's also generous to the other side as well. Since there are no rebuttals, there has to be some concession. I think that's pretty persuasive argument. So. Good question. Other questions about anything? Is it that clear? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward thing. I mean, it's about having fun and being imaginative and saying persuasive stuff. And audience heckling. We didn't talk about this. So anytime you're debating and you have an audience, that audience will respond to the arguments they like by knocking on the table. You might be familiar with this. So if you hear something you like, you can pound away, right? But no Led Zeppelin drum solo. 9 minutes or none of this kind of thing that people like to do. None of that. You're not Ricky Ricardo banging away. But you can knock for things. If you really get excited about somebody's argument, you could say, here, here. Not like location, but like, here, here. Here, here. No one's ever spelled that on the rules either. I don't know which here we're talking about. It's like, here, this place, the hot argument's happening. Or listen to this guy or girl.
One of each.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it's one of each. Anything else before we get started?
How long are the speeches going to be for the speech?
Let's do 5-minute speeches. I think we'll shorten it. That way we'll have more time to talk about the debate and see like a good model. So during the prep time, what I'd like you to do, after you hear the motion, is to shadow prep one side. And by side, we mean 4 sides. Yeah, there are actually 4 sides, if you think about it. Prep, talk to your prep. What arguments would we make? What are the principles at stake here, and who's affected by this? You have plenty of stuff to talk about for your argument. You and your partner are offering a thesis to us, a case to us, that needs to be persuasive, but you don't want to lose sight of that thesis. So what is it that you're bringing forward? What is it you're offering? Okay, motion for the practice debate. Is somebody going to run the time? Prep time? Is somebody? I have a timer in my
I
bag.
will run the prep time.
You will?
Megan, well done.
Excellent. Thank you. Christmas came early. Only in Montana one received such a generous gift. Is everybody ready? The motion for the demonstration debate is, this House supports limited U.S. military strikes on Syria. Everybody got that? This House supports limited U.S. military strikes on Syria. Now this is the way motions are phrased. This House part, we can talk about that after the debate a bit. It doesn't mean anything, it's anachronistic.
Starting time.
So no one's going to get up and be like, this House is the United States, or this House is Barack Obama. No one does that. It's just anachronism.
I need some helpful Rocky work down the name of the spell. So we can